most of you know, we always start our programs out with prayer and we end with prayer. I just believe it's crucial. So at this time, I'm going to ask Reverend Elder Claude Oliver. And Claude Oliver is pastor of Greater Faith and Deliverance Ministries in Binghamton, New York, to offer prayer. You're on mute.
Let's pray together. God, we thank you for this for which we gather. We ask, Father, that as the young people express themselves tonight, that as our president has stated, allow us all to get into good trouble. We ask that you would bless this gathering as we gather virtually to share ideas and thoughts and opinions and strategies. We pray that you will give us to know that we're all important in your sight and that Black lives really do matter. We pray that you would help us to share information that would interest someone and spur them on to do the right thing, to take right and take charge of their ability to vote, the right that's been given to them. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Elder Oliver. We would like to move forward and get a little business out of the way up at the top of the program. Most of you know that this is election year for the branch. Just like we're having political elections around the country, it's the election year for this branch. And Dr. Jimmy Williams need to give the group, the listeners, an update in terms of the process. So at this time, Dr. Williams, will you give us an update on the branch election process?
Okay, I will be brief. This is the second part of our three-part election process. First part, it was September, is that we selected a nominating committee, and the job of the nominating committee is to come up with candidates for the electoral process. And tonight, the October meeting, the nominating committee is charged with giving its report, the slate of candidates that are running for office for the NAACP. And the nominating committee consists of Ms. Tina Walker, Dr. Gregory Williams, Mrs. Patricia Williams, and Dr. Jimmy Williams. I am the chair. And so here's the report. For officer, the open, we have President, Ms. Georgia Verdier running for president. First president, Jimmy Williams. The treasurer, the position is open. There's someone interested in that position, but it will be filled later on. So there are no candidates for treasurer. Secretary, Paulette Daniel Hill. And for executive committee member, we have Ms. Janice Bailey, Mr. Reuben Bailey, Mrs. Michelle Boris, Mrs. Susan Ellison, Ms. Olivia Christen, Ms. Tanya McGee, Ms. Paula Strickland, and Ms. Astra. Just want to say something? Those are the slated candidates for office. The actual election will be held in November. We're still working on how we're going to actually hold the election. It will not be an in-person election like we normally have. We'll probably have a program going on at the same time we have the election. So the election is coming up next month. We'll send the information out later as to how we're going to actually hold the election, whether it's going to be electronic or some other method. Okay. So this report is respectively submitted to our secretary, Ms. Paulette Hill.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for that report. And you will be hearing more about that as we move forward. That process starts in September and moves through October. And now I would like to say thank you. I'm excited to the young adults who are joining us today. We have some young people who are, they've been in the movement, and we want to hear their experiences, perspectives, objectives, and goals. So we planned this specifically to hear from them. We have invited people from different walks of life to tune in, to get to hear, and to get to better understand the thinking of our younger adults. And so I'm going to, at this time, have the moderators to introduce them. So I'm going to just give the names of the moderators, and then they can introduce themselves, and then they will introduce the panel, and we will be ready to roll. The first moderator is Mr. Matthew Latimer from the Justice Department in New York City. And I don't know if he's on yet. I don't see him.
He's on.
He's on, okay.
Yes, I'm here, Georgia.
Yep.
You'll be, I can't see. You'll be able to introduce, oh yeah, introduce yourself. And then we have Mrs. Titus, Ostra Titus, JDMSW founder, principal collective evolution consulting of Hector, New York. And she can tell you a little bit about herself. So at this time, I would like to turn the forum over to the moderators, and they can take us forward.
Matthew, why do you want to introduce yourself?
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm Matthew Latimer. I'm with the U.S. Department of Justice Community Relations Service. What we do is we work directly with communities dealing with conflicts based on race, color, and national origin. We provide mediation services, training, consultation, and also facilitated dialogues, which is what we're looking to do this evening. I've actually been with the Department of Justice for the last 12 years. Prior to that, I actually worked for the private sector for a company called LexisNexis, and I also have a law degree from Benjamin Cardozo Law School in New York.
Thank you.
Thanks. I will introduce myself, and then we're going to turn it over to the panelists to have you all introduce yourselves as well. But first I will go. So I am Astra Titus, and I am recently relocated to Hector, New York, right outside of Watkins Glen. And I have a consulting business called Collective Evolution Consulting that my aim is to sort of create spaces and places and policies and programs that that create belonging, places, ways for people across multiple communities, across multiple socioeconomic statuses to understand connection, self-possession, connection, and belonging, and to build ways of helping people to find that in our social service programs and social justice laws and institutions. I am, as part of an arm of that, of my business, I also own it was known as the Curious George store. I'm now changing it to Curious George and Company. And that is going to be a physical space in which children and parents can, children and caregivers, adults can experience exactly what I'm talking about, is that the connection building to belonging through connecting through play, through connecting through learning, focusing on early childhood literacy and STEM and mindfulness skill building. So that's sort of the on the ground version, and then I'm also consulting on policies and programs. So I am delighted to be here. Oh, and I am clearly, as Dr. Walker said, I am hopefully will remain a member, executive committee member of the NAACP Corning Elmira chapter. So that is me in a nutshell. I am going to call on the first person, I guess, to possibly just to introduce yourself. Give us a little bit of your experience, what you are into, what you're passionate about, and why you're here. So, because I know her, I'm going to call on Hallie. She's dear to me. So, Hallie, please introduce yourself if you're there. I lost you somewhere.
Yes, I'm here. I apologize. I had the wrong Zoom invite link.
Yes, well, we all did. But I was
okay. So I'm happy
that you're here, and I do love you, and I am eager for you to introduce yourself. However, I was actually calling on Hallie Phillips.
Oh, see, two Hollies. Sorry.
That's okay. Hey, you know, you're one of us, girl. Come on. So I don't know if Hallie, I lost her somewhere.
Yeah, she's there.
Yep, I'm
Okay.
right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
there you are. Hi, Hallie.
Hallie, Holly, it's an easy mix-up. My name's Hallie Phillips, and I'm also from Hector, which is just outside of Watkins Glen. I grew up there my whole life. I am a third-year physical therapy student at the University of Buffalo, and I was involved in helping coordinate the Coming Together in Solidarity for Justice event that was held in Watkins Glen this summer. So that's why I'm here. I'm passionate about physical therapy and helping people in general, but I'm also very passionate about politics and helping everyone, especially my generation, sort of rediscover the power of their vote and how we can structure our future the way that we believe it should be.
Having problems with my mute and unmute there. Thank you, Hallie. And Reverend Holly, if you want to join in anytime, you know you're welcome. So continuing on with our panelists, however, I'm going to ask if Mr. Cuba Leach could introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Jarmy Kuba Leach. My middle name is Kuba. Everybody calls me that. And I'm a sheet metal 112 worker in Elmira, New York, and a local community artist. And I've been really passionate about, you know, trying to let the Black community and a lot of kids and people my age know about, you know, politics, how they affect us and the community, and how much their vote matters, and how much, you know, these jobs that, you know, are there and that we need to be committed to help our community and art, really, you know, trying to spread a lot of positivity and push through the art.
I love it. And I'll just say for myself that like, I've been getting so much more in tune, I think, with or maybe deeper into various art mediums like during this time. And I'm just like, I'm so happy to have you here to kind of hear from your viewpoint and from your artistic sort of viewpoint, how you're seeing the world and how, you know, and what your views of change are. Anyway, so thanks.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And then how about Mr. Clemens? Are you here somewhere?
Yes, I'm here. How you doing?
Oh, there you are.
So I'm Jordan Clemens. I'm 33 years old. I live in Ithaca, New York, born and raised with exposure to Binghamton, New York, as well as New York City. I was leading the rallies here in Ithaca all the way from June when George Floyd was, you know, murdered. And I pretty much took the initiative and led marches and rallies of upwards of 1,700 to 2,000 people. Within 6 weeks of holding the rallies every Sunday at 2 p.m., I launched a grassroots revitalization racial justice organization called Unbroken Promise Initiative. And what our aim is to do is to build a localized economy on the west end of Ithaca, which is the most impoverished communities of Black and brown, disenfranchised and marginalized people. And so we're aiming to do that by building our social, political, and economic awareness over on the west end of Ithaca. And in doing so, will inspire, uplift, and empower people to take full responsibility, full control of their upward mobility and break the cycle of poverty within their lives and family, you know, vicious cycle within their families. So that's our mission, that's our aim, and that's who I am. I have a background in youth advocacy pretty much my entire life. I was raised by my grandmother. I'm the oldest out of 7. She raised all of us. So growing up, I was kind of the first one throughout my entire family as a Black man to take on full responsibility and do and endure whatever it took to overcome the systematic racial injustice here in Ithaca, and took pretty much endured everything and was able to overcome. And now, you know, I pretty much went back to ensure that other people have an example and to be a role model to those who also are seeking a way out. Thank you for having me tonight.
Love it, love it, love it. So the other thing that's been circling through my mind a lot recently is the difference between coming at policymaking, coming at change from a place of positivity, from a place of solutions, right? Rather than from a place of fear. And what I see right now happening, playing out in politics all over the place, right? There's the fear mongering and the wanting to be divisive. And I think that for us, for our people, we are so strong when we come from a place of positivity and solutions. And so I love hearing your story, because that's exactly, you know, what that is. So thank you. All right, Ms. Jubilee. Oh, sorry, that's not a Ms. I'm sorry, I thought it said Nicole. Mr. Jubilee, I apologize profusely.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicholas Jubilee, and I'm a senior at Quincy Pinnacle High School. Let's see. When I'm older, I want to be a nurse anesthetist. So my goals are, I want to go to college next year to a 4-year university, and I also want to compete on the men's diving team. And then I want to work for about 2 or 3 years, and then I want to go to nurse anesthetist school, and then become a CRNA. I'm very, very passionate about inclusivity and equality, because I strongly believe that it's been long enough for all of these problems in the inequality and the discrimination and the oppression, and I believe that as a youth, as someone who's very involved in the youth, I think that now we are more interconnected than ever before, and we should be taking advantage of that interconnectedness and really be trying to advocate for change.
Great. Sorry, I had to turn some lights on because it was getting really dark. Thank you. And so, in that, you know, that's resonating with the same message, right? The inclusivity versus the division. And I think we're all kind of like trying to, you know, reach for ways to do that right now. So I appreciate that you sort of, you know, pounding on that door. And now we have Jaden Filkins. No? Okay, maybe Jaden did not make it this evening. Okay, did I miss any other of the youth panelists? I'm going off of the list that I have in front of me, but if I missed anyone, please speak up.
Jaden was going to call in because she has some medical issues and she didn't want to be on the Zoom, but she was going to call in.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe, I mean, yeah, hopefully she will, but if not, you know, we got plenty of others to talk about this stuff. So yes, but hopefully we'll be able to loop in with her. If not tonight, then certainly in the future. Yes, I will turn it over to Matthew to start us off. I think when he and I were talking about, you know, sort of this discussion, this conversation, we want it to be flowing. We want it to be, you know, a discussion. And so we do have questions and sort of guideposts, but this is your panel, you know, so you tell us what it is that you want us to hear. But, you know, we have questions to start us off, and we'll see where it all takes us. So Matthew.
Excellent. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Great. I'm having some internet connection issues, so I may have to switch devices midstream. But the one question I wanted to ask the panel, how is this summer different than last summer? And it's an obvious question, but I want to give it to you to tell us exactly what was different than last summer.
I guess I'll start first. So I would say for me, the biggest change from last summer to this summer was my location, because last summer I was at a 6-week pre-pharmacy program at Howard University, and I was doing a lot of volunteering at the Washington D.C. VA in the inpatient pharmacy and helping patients and everything. And it was a very hands-on experience, I would say. So I would say like that was my biggest change. And then another change was COVID pretty much, but that's like pretty mainstream in general. So
Nick, did you, when you changed location, that's a big change, because I know that because I just changed location and moved here, so but in the sense of, in the fact that you were in DC last summer and then here, this summer, what are, just in those locations, are there differences? Did you feel different in regards of in terms of like how you felt around law enforcement, how you felt around safety, and what, if that is the case, what were some of those differences, right? And I think also, what do you, well, yeah, we'll start there. And I'm not trying to like feed you anything. I mean, it could be that you feel, more safe in DC. I often do feel more safe in larger cities, so, but just sort of for me, it's been really interesting to weigh that, the difference in location and how I feel about it with me interacting with the community and specifically with law enforcement around me.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say like it's the same level of discomfort around law enforcement for me, but I would say I felt like I guess like more safe around law enforcement because I was always in a group of people who look like me, and that just made me feel like, okay, if something were to happen, I wouldn't feel like I'm being singled out. And then also, yeah, so I would just say like it's the same discomfort level, but it's also you feel more safe around people who look like you and people who understand you than people who don't look like you, and they may try to understand you, but it's not the same as someone who experiences what it's like to be in your shoes every day.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in on this topic?
Yeah.
In terms of the differences just within the past year that you may see or not see in your environment and your community, and how you're interacting with the community and with law enforcement?
Yeah, I guess I'll go next. I guess I'll speak to the fact that in Ithaca, I was last year in the summertime, I was directing as well as coordinating a youth basketball program, which is pretty much open to the community. And what I did with that program was my main focus was to bring a real divided community together in one space for basketball games, and pretty much introduce them to a different culture, such as the Black and brown culture. So how I did that was I bought vendors to the basketball games, food vendors, and these vendors had things like things that come from Black and brown people, right? We had the macaroni and cheese made from scratch. We had the country fried chicken. We had a plethora of different foods, and what you had was Caucasian people who never ate or seen how Black people eat, experiencing these different foods and becoming just falling in love with the food. Excuse me?
Everyone can just make sure that they're muted unless they are speaking. That'd be great.
Okay. So, they were just falling in love with the food. I say that to say, by the end of that summer, you had a lot of people who were kind of inquiring about where they could get this type of food because they had never had it before. And they wanted to know if these people had restaurants or establishments of their own. Fast forward to this summer, we have COVID. And then we also had a situation where the world was paused. The thing, you know, as far as a Black person being murdered by police, that is something that I grew up, police brutality, that's something that has happened right here in Ithaca. That's something that I was aware of growing up when we're talking about the Rodney King situation, which was a big deal when I was growing up. So these things were not new to me. However, the one thing that was new to me after the George Floyd situation and Breonna Taylor and so on was the fact that white people, Caucasians in my community became outraged. And when the Caucasians in my community became outraged, being a historian and being aware of our history, the marches and rallies that were originally organized were by white organizations. And so when they organized the rally, there was a bunch of people, like I said, probably over 1,000 people, and 97%, 98% was Caucasian. Now that is something I had never seen even throughout history, where this was a situation that was about a Black man being murdered, Black people getting murdered by police, and then white people coming out. I think that the reason for that being is because for the first time in history, people could not go on about their day as if nothing had happened and totally forget about it. People were forced, Caucasians were forced to pay attention. And so I think that that was the difference.
You know, you just raised like two really important points to me. And one, and it's stuff that it's like this thread that I just keep seeing running through all of this, right? And one is the issue of bringing together, right? And you did, I mean, it's from your description, you did it beautifully with, you know, no judgment, right? What do you mean you've never had greens? You know, what's wrong with you? You know, but right. So it's like there's no judgment in it, but it's bringing people together over something that we all, it's a you know, a human experience, right? Of eating and enjoying good food. But it's also, yeah, so it's that, you know, creating a unity. And the thing that I really loved was the second part, when I was bracing myself for, you know, what's different about this summer versus last summer. And I was bracing myself where, oh my gosh, it's so much worse. And there's so much fatality and there's so much, and you came out with this really lovely, positive set. You know, what you said was so positive, that you see the unity, that you see people coming to the table, and that it's not just us. And I love that that's your framework and that that's your perspective of how you see the difference amidst all of the, you know, everything going on, that that the difference between last summer and this summer can be seen as a positive. And so I'm just I think that's awesome. Next. Matthew, jump in because I'm talking too much. You know, you guys stop me.
I did have one question. The folks that came out last summer, did you see some of the same folks out this summer in terms of the marches and rallies that were going on?
Yeah, sure. You know, I believe that the people who experienced the diversity and inclusivity last summer, you know, became closer and connected with a demographic of people that they did not know much about. And so I think that when that happened with George Floyd,
If everyone can mute themselves, that would be great. Thank you.
Hold on, let me see if I can.
I believe that so because of you know, the diversity and inclusion that we had last summer, I believe that when that happened to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the connection was strong, and so that brought people out.
Yeah.
this summer. So yes, a lot of people were there from last summer.
All right, thank you, Jordan. So I think we have a few more people to reflect on last summer.
Yeah, so I'll go. I was home for the summer. I was supposed to have a clinical internship in Philly. So I was supposed to spend 12 weeks, working with people, kind of fine tuning my clinical skills. And then I found myself at home because of COVID and just watching the news every night. And it was pretty morbid, I mean, we have this pandemic that is sweeping across our country, largely affecting the Black community more. And then you see the civil unrest of more Black lives being taken from police brutality. And there was a kid named Alec Betts from my community who had organized a protest. And I just sort of felt like, even though I'm from, Schuyler County, which is largely a white community, we have a bit of diversity, but not much. I just felt like it's getting to a point where, we need to reflect on ourselves and say, okay, just because I'm from a community that's largely white, we need to speak up. We have a role in this, and we need to condemn racism. It exists everywhere in our country. So let's play a role and condemn racism. Let's try to come together in a time of such division and agree on something. So when we had our event downtown, we invited Republican leadership, Democrats running against them, Georgia, and Dr. Williams from the NAACP. And, as far as policy goes, obviously politicians say different things and their views, but everyone that day in Watkins Glen, called George Floyd's murder for what it was, which was a murder. And it's something that we can all agree on. And I just feel like allowing personally, not being away on a clinical, not being in Philly, having this time at home, it was just a time to sort of reflect and say, like, okay, we need to come together and we need to stop with the divisive language and come together on the fact that we're all alike more than we think we are. And let's support the Black community.
Excellent, thank you.
Hey, can everyone put their phone on mute if they're not talking, please? Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I'll go. So for me, what is different from the last year or last summer, I mean, obviously is COVID, and honestly, there's a lot of other things that really aren't different, in my opinion, to where I'm at and the people that I speak to in the community. A lot of people are very uneducated on a lot of things, and every day I find myself having to educate not only the Black community, but also every other community, especially the white community, because I work around majority white people, and I have to educate them on things that their parents and other people should be educating them on every day. And I don't mind educating people, but some of these conversations are the same conversations that I'm having over and over again, and nobody's telling them about it. And it after a while, the repetition and things like that, you start to realize that a lot isn't changing, but I mean, in the art stuff, a lot hasn't changed either. There's not a lot of Black artists out there consistently coming out and doing art, and that are involved in these community art projects and things like that. And when you speak to people putting things up and stuff like that, there's not a lot of voice or opinion on that. So, I mean, to me, like I said, the only thing I feel like has changed is, the fact COVID came around and shut a lot of things down and changing a lot of people's lives. But other than that, there's not a lot of change. There's not a lot of people that are speaking out. And when they do speak out, a lot of people are half listening. and they're not there and they don't want to be involved, and it's really hard to get through. And you know, when you try not to be discouraged, when you try to be there, when you try to educate and things like that, people might think you're crazy, or people might think you're doing too much, when there's a lot going on that people need to know. So, you know, I try to educate the Black community because they're going to keep getting these kind of questions. And I try to educate the white community because those are a lot of my friends, a lot of my coworkers, a lot of my the people I hang around, you know. And I try to make sure that they can reach out to everybody else in the community, and you know, they know that the only way we can fight anything that we come against is together. So there's a lot of things that I like to touch on, and some people have the time for it, some people don't. And other than COVID and my job, you know, I went from a debt collection worker to a sheet metal worker. That's a different environment from a big melting pot to, you know, a lot of different blue collar, hardworking men, you know, so.
You know, I think that you really, like, you hit on sort of the crux of what has been an age-old issue in any policy work. And trust me, I'm a lot older than you, and I've been doing policy work for a long time, and it's again and again and again. And it's just that it's how do you get unstuck, right? How do you get people to move forward? And I think that one of the reasons why I, for the first time in a really long time, feel so excited about the possibility and the potential to move forward is because we have you guys at the front.
Yes.
Being our you know, our voice and our spokespeople and giving the input that is critical to form the policy, to form the, you know. And so I think that, you know, it is the question of how do we educate and how do we understand in order to educate, right? And so, you know, I keep coming up with all of my themes or whatever, and one of the big ones is curiosity, right? And how do we step up to this really heavy work with a sense of curiosity about each other and about what we're trying to build, right? And not get stuck in the same old talking patterns, but come at it with a fresh, from a fresh place of curiosity, but also really wanting to get to the bottom of it so that we can move forward. And so I think that there's the education piece, but it's also exactly what you're talking about, is getting people to talk, right? And people from across every which way, every side, every corner of the table, to, as much as we can, all approach it from that place of curiosity. And the more that we can be those sort of curiosity builders out there in the world, you know, I see that as part of our job, as, you know, it's part of activism. And so I hear you on the everything feels the same. And I guess, you know, you just have to take my word as an old person, that it's like, to me, it feels different. It really does. And I feel like the conversation, exactly, you know, and what we've been talking about, that the unity is rising, the conversation is more open. We are saying we don't want to be stuck in the same old, and it's you guys that are doing all that. So I'm hopeful.
No, that's really an excellent point. I mean, the question I would ask Cuba, you know, coming from an artist background and going to that blue collar environment, how have you made that shift? And I know there's some challenges with that, but what are you doing, I guess, to compensate or to pivot to that new environment?
So I've never been a guy of small words. I've never like beat around the bush with anybody. I've always kept it up front, you know, and not try to step on any toes. But I've never, you know, tried to offend anybody on purpose or criticize them without trying to educate them while I'm trying to tell them what they need to know. So when I shifted as being an artist and so many jobs in the community I'm from to, you know, that blue collar where I work around majority white men, older men that are, I mean, there are a lot of them have some crazy views. And when I shifted to that, it was real weird. You know, I had to sit back and listen, and I had to watch people's behaviors and how they conversated, because it's a different environment I was never around before, you know, compared to all the other places that I've been and the people that I've been around. So, I mean, it was a little weird. I try not, like I said, I try not to step on people's toes and stuff. But if I heard something that was, you know, really offensive or something I felt like I need to educate somebody on, you know, I'll just pull them to the side and let them know, like, hey, I need you to understand this about this situation or this topic or whatever it may be. Because like I said, a lot of things are a little weird, and compared to, you know, going from the environments I'm used to an environment like that around guys that, you know, they're all a certain way, that is sometimes disturbing. So
No, it is a challenge, and it sounds like you really have, you know, stepped up to the plate in doing that, you know, even in taking folks to the side to have those conversations, which sometimes go over a little bit better than trying to address a group.
And
So thank you.
sorry, I just wanted to say, you know, Kuba, that I don't want, like, I realized that when I, you know, my answer before about being hopeful and blah, 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 like, I don't discount in any way, or I don't want to discount how difficult it might be to be in that role, right? And to be in that place. And how lonely that can be, you know? And I don't know why I'm saying that, but just to know that, you know, you can reach out for support, you know, and that's I think part of what I'm hoping to build is sort of this this sort of, you know, a network, a coalition sort of how do we move this forward, and how do we support each other in moving forward, right? Because I've been through it. I know that can be a really lonely place, you know. And so I just encourage you to, you know, call me. Just, you know, but to talk to the people that understand where, you know, where you're coming from, and how that might affect you in your, you know, your mental health, how that might affect how you feel, how it might affect your day-to-day life, you know. It's the moment.
one thing I do want to say is, so in the environment that I am in, because we're a union, I mean, they're really, a lot of people are really heavy on brotherhood, which I really appreciate, which is why there's a few people there that'll listen, that'll, you know, they'll stick out, they'll listen, and they want to be educated, and they want to know what's going on, and they want to educate their brothers. But, you know, when you're around that environment and they're so used to, you know, you keep your head down, you don't say anything, and they don't think that's not going to harm anybody, when it really does harm the majority if you're not, you know, speaking up. And that's what our union has always been about, you know, speaking up. If you needed something to say, you speak up. You say what you have to say, you cause a strike, you do whatever you need to do. So, you know, I mean, like I said, being in that environment is different, but I've never been the one to be standoffish, and I'll always say what I have to say. And if somebody has a problem with it, we could talk about it, which is why I pull people to the side and we have our private conversations. But sometimes, like I said, there's some disgusting conversations all throughout life a lot of people have. And, you know, sometimes you have to apply a little bit of pressure so they know, you know, that was wrong, and I'll educate you why. And if you need a further education, we could, you know, do this at another time or whatever it may be. But I mean, we're brothers, so I'm not going to sit here and criticize you and hate you for it. I'm going to educate you. And if you choose not to take the education, I mean, there's not much more I can do.
Yeah, I'm going to love you as a brother, right?
It's tough, but
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people there that will take, you know, what I have to say, and they'll use it or they'll apply it where they need to apply it. And I mean, I'm grateful for the few that are there and the future that of our union and many other people and their families and things like that. So
You know what, I've just in my experience that I've found to be, and it's like I almost have like little cards that I can make up to hand out to people like, this is what you need to know about Black people. No, but I find it really helpful to, like, when people are responsive and when they are curious, to be able to give them something. Not, it doesn't have to be like an actual formal you're giving them, but to give them their, like, something to walk away with, that they feel like they can discuss in comfort, you know, that they can take to their other brothers, that to their friends, to their, and if they are, you know, they're listening to you and they value what you're saying, and they think that you know, that this should be an area of change. Give them like one or two things, you know, just, you know, these are the points that really are the ones that matter right now, you know, and it can be from your perspective, it can be from the world, whatever, but just something for them to kind of hook on to, that they can then take, you know, like, oh yes, I remember, I can talk about this, you know what I mean? I don't know if it works or not, but I just feel like it's a useful way to make people, to empower people, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. Empower people to take the language that we're giving, to take the messages that we're giving forward in their own way, you know?
No, definitely, definitely. I think that the next question we wanted to ask and get at is what has your relationship been like with the police? And really the elephant in the room is that, has that relationship changed over the last year?
And by relationship, it doesn't have to be a formal, like, yes, I have been in front of the police, I know the police, just in terms of like how you feel about them, how you, yeah, your views, your relationships.
I can say that the older I got and the more I understand it, and especially the more of my friends that became police, the more I became less standoffish, because, you know, in the Black community, it's, you know, there's a disconnect. There's a big disconnect. There's no trust. And we're all standoff. We don't like police in the Black community. And a majority of us, I should say. I can't speak for all of us. I'm not the gatekeeper, but I can say that where I grew up and a lot of people that I hang around, we, you know, there's a huge disconnect. And the more I grew, the more I could understand, you know, you're doing your job, and some of you take your job to a new level, but it's not all of you, and some of you make others look bad, and it's not holding each other accountable. And then there's many policies, things in place where the department has to actually take responsibility and be held accountable and go a little further. And there's a lot of people that don't speak up on that. And the older I got, the more I understood that, which is why I wanted to pass it on to younger, and to the younger Black community and the younger kids and the youth, and even people my age, and to let them know, like, you have to understand, this is a part of their job. You know, they do this 40 hours, 60 hours, however many hours they work, and this is a part of their living. This is how they do it. But some people take it to a new level, and it'll ripple through the community, and it takes different effects, and and a lot of people don't realize that, even in their department. And then there's policies that are basically built against the people, not even just the Black community, just against the people. And there's a huge disconnect, and I don't think it's just the police department's responsibility, but they have a huge responsibility and accountability to stand up to the plate and own up and to take action to, you know, do some better community policing, be out there making the connections with your community, knowing people. Because I can tell you right now, it's going to be difficult to do that. It's just how else are you going to be able to do your job if nobody trusts you? If everybody stand off, and you're going to have the same cycles over and over again. And we have to come forward. So I can say I haven't had experience with police in a long time, but just knowing police and learning more, I can understand that much.
So Nick, you had talked about this a little bit in terms of like feeling safe, right, with law enforcement. What would you say to this in terms of like how has your attitude changed, you know, and how you're feeling about community policing and for all of us, like for our role in community policing?
Okay, yeah. So, excuse me. So I would say like as I've gotten older, like as he said, I would say like my view has shifted, but I would say in like an opposite way. So one of my uncles, he's a cop, and then as a kid, I was like, oh, Uncle Skip, you're a cop. That's so cool. But then it's sort of like but like as I've gotten older, I realized like yeah, there are some good cops, but like and like I'm not gonna like say that like all cops are bad, but it's also like you are working for a system that kills people who look like me, and even though you want to help the community, it's also like you're working for a system that's protecting people who are murdering people in cold blood, and they're being protected by another system. So it's kind of like, where is the accountability? Where is the responsibility of your actions? And where is owning up to what you did and that you know it's wrong, and trying to say, okay, I know what I did was wrong and I should be punished, but instead you're just trying to hide it under hide it under a rug and everything. So I would say like as I've gotten older, it's become more of a negative view towards the police. And then like yeah, I would say it's pretty much just gotten more negative like as I've gotten older and like and started to like understand things more, like and see more and read more and just like hear more.
All right, thank you.
Oh, sorry, Matthew, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Do you feel like that's something that is changeable? Your attitude? Like
I definitely, yeah, I would definitely. Oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off. What did you say?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I would definitely say my attitude is changeable, but I feel like I'm not going to be ready to change it until I see change happen. Because it's like, okay, like yeah, like I can let my guard down, but then is it like if that's one time I let my guard down, is something bad gonna happen? Or is it like, okay, like my guard's down, but then is it ever going to come back up if change never really happens? So I feel like change needs to happen for more people to start trusting police officers and being more apt to turn to law enforcement if they have problems.
Hallie, how is your has your attitude towards law enforcement changed, and what, you know, how do you see yourself relating to, you know, and feeling about law enforcement in, well, in your community and you know, wherever?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I have never personally had a negative experience with law enforcement, right? But I also, at the same time, have to acknowledge, like, I'm a young white female. So my experience with law enforcement is not universal, and that's something that I have to understand. I will say that I think I agree with Nick in the sense that, like, yes, there are some good police officers. There's a lot of good police officers out there. But I feel like when your job is to enforce the law equally, no matter who you're dealing with, you can't just have police officers, you can't just have most police officers be good or some police officers be good. All police officers have to be good police officers. And I don't think there is a system in place currently in our country that holds police officers accountable. I mean, you look at someone like Derek Chauvin, who murdered George Floyd. He had multiple complaints against him, right? He should have been stopped. He should not have been a police officer. George Floyd would be alive today if he was held accountable for his actions. And I just think that's something that we have to recognize, especially white people, right? You have to recognize that your relationship with the police is not how everyone across the country feels.
That's really an excellent point. How do you do that? how do you get that point across to people that their experience is not what everyone else's reality is?
I think conversation, it might seem like a simplistic answer, but I think just starting conversations with people, especially like, you know, that's how I felt that was my role in my community, right? I come from a largely white populated community, and I felt like, okay, what's my role in this national crisis of, you know, racism and Black men and women being gunned down by law enforcement? My role is to educate my community. And, you know, let's talk about how Black men and women feel when they're pulled over by a police officer. I think, you know, when you listen to people talk about when their children reach an age of when they're driving by themselves, or, you know, they're teenagers, and you have to sit down with your kid and talk to them about how, like, you know, if you're pulled over by a police officer, you need to toe the line because it could be life and death for you. That's something that white people don't deal with. So I think starting those conversations, you get to a point where you're never going to understand what that's like, but you can listen to them. You know, you can listen to the Black community and figure out exactly what the issues are. And then from there, you can start to address issues. But you have to listen to people first. You have to, like I said, you're never going to perfectly understand it from that point of view, but you can empathize with that.
That's really an important point.
I like that.
It's huge. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I like to, you know, piggyback on that. So, you know, my thing is, you know, knowing the history, right, to understand how we got here. So what is the root of why police even exist? They were used to go out and capture runaway slaves, right? And then we have to look at the fact of, you know, who normally is in the profession of policing, and what type of people, what are their backgrounds? Usually it's white males who aren't haven't grown up in a diverse and inclusive community. So right off the bat, you have, you know, people who don't have the capacity to really understand the Black and brown community. However, they have the power to make decisions that essentially affect us and our lives. And so right there, I think that who we allow to be police, as far as, you know, what is the vetting process like, right? My thing is, you know, the systems take on the shape of whoever is at the top or at the helm, whoever that individual is, you know, the system tends to take a shape of whoever is at the top. So I go back to the root of an individual. Does an individual have exposure, and were they raised in a truly diverse and inclusive community, right? What were their patterns like as far as their actions coming up through school or coming up through life, right? We have to look at that. A lot of times these police officers are coming from military backgrounds, right? So psychologically, you know, they're operating on a total different frequency than people who are civilian, are of civilian lifestyle. Another thing is you only need a high school diploma, right, to become a police officer. Your training is only 6 to 12 months of training, right? And so with that being said, you're giving an individual who may lack the capacity to understand one particular demographic, which is Black and brown, and these people are giving power over the lives of people in which, you know, they pretty much, a lot of them have no idea about this culture, you know, how we act, you know, the things that we do, you know, and a lot of times I believe that is the problem with policing, is you're not allowing the process to become a police officer, who they allow to be police officers. I don't know if it's intentional, but what I do know is it's a human issue. You need to have people who have that type of power, who are hired to uplift a law, they need to have a certain capacity and understanding for what being humane is. And it's not just an understanding of what human is or a culture is and where you come from. You have to have a truly diverse and inclusive background, and you have to truly have partook in that that background to truly be a holistic human being. And then whatever situation you're in, you'll always make the right decision for the greater good of all humans that you come into contact with. So that's my take on police. I have not, my thing is human beings, everyone deserves respect. You know what I mean? So I'm always respectful, even if you hate me. What you are and who you are as a human being does not dictate who I am as a human being. So I'm always respectful, regardless who you are. And I don't think that a lot of police officers take to the job with that in mind, that you are a public servant and your job is to be respectful to the people in which you serve all the time, regardless of their color, their gender, where they're from, where they live. Respect.
I love it. I love it. And, I think that to me, it just brings up the issue, right, of fear again, right? If you're interacting with a community out of, there's no knowledge, there's no curiosity, there's no learning of, from that community, it leads you to fear. Right. And so if you are policing out of fear, out of that fear space, it's all going to go wrong. Right. But exactly what you were just talking about, Jordan, if you're coming at it from a space of respect, and even if you don't know what those shoes of that other person, what they're walking in, you understand that the person is inherently due respect, and you do not, and therefore you can get rid of the fear.
Yeah, I mean, we're human beings.
Right.
So, right, if you see everyone as humans that you come into contact with, and you understand all humans deserve respect, then right there, you have an easier time. But like I said, the experience is, and what I see is, I don't see a lot of all officers approach all human beings with that dignity and respect.
So my question is, now that we've sort of, we're pulling together these, or I am anyway, these themes, these common threads, right? How do we get people to care about it? How do we get, I'm of a certain socioeconomic status. So if there are many times that if I'm talking to my white friends about my fear for my sons driving while brown, my fear for myself driving while brown, they don't really believe it. Or I feel like that, I should say. I feel like they don't really believe that fear it doesn't really apply to me because I sound like this. I can, I can talk my way out. I'm a lawyer, but how do we get people to understand? And Hallie, your point is very well taken. Like if you can only sort of wrap your mind around it if you can sort of understand from that other person's perspective. And so how do we get people curious enough to listen and curious enough to want to understand what that perspective is, and curious enough to then take that to spreading that out to their communities and to getting behind the policy that that we're trying to change, getting behind dismantling the structure of racism and the system of racism, right? Because we are so far away from people, from anyone, not from anyone, I shouldn't say that, from the country as a whole, recognizing and understanding systemic racism, right? How do we get people curious and not fearful about that? How do we unite people around that?
Well, I believe that it starts with bringing everyone together. How do you do that? In the age of COVID, everything is virtual, right? So, what my organization is doing here in Ithaca is we're putting together a podcast called Healing in Real Time. And what Healing in Real Time is going to do is specifically bring all the dynamics and the things in which Black and brown people experience in their communities to real life for all to see. And what the hope is that as all people are tuning in and watching this, they will see that we are less different than we are alike. Once that is felt within an individual, then I believe that that's where you will get people truly horned in together and collaboratively to really make everlasting change. But I think that once again, we have to have those who are not privy to what it is like to be Black and brown in America. We have to give them a glimpse. We have to show that, we have to, because we don't know how one another eats at one another's table. So there has to be things like platforms. There has to be shows. The Cosby's back in the day was a big one, right? And me seeing how it affected America, with the Cosby Show, I'm taking that and I'm doing that with Healing in Real Time.
That sounds excellent, because I think at the bottom, the end of the day, what you had brought up and also what Haley had mentioned, empathy and respect, are two things that everyone wants to receive. Whether or not we give it is another question, but we all want to receive that. And at the end of the day, realizing that just like you want to get home to your family, to your loved ones, that other person wants to do the same. And, really looking at, as you were saying, looking at what makes us more alike than what makes us dissimilar, to bring people to a space. And I would say a table normally, but in COVID, just, the same venue where we can have that exchange and understanding.
Yeah, can I just add something else real short? Another experience I experienced in doing these things and understanding that this is a way for us to come together and bring us closer together is I walked in solidarity a couple of weeks ago with the Trump ralliers and conservative people. And I went in there with the intentions of, totally being open-minded and hearing what the perspective of these people were. Now, being Black, I was told that conservatives and Republicans are racist, right? That's the thing. But I went in there, understanding that there was risk associated with this, but I said that the risk needed to be taken because maybe if I could have a conversation and an open ear and hear what the fears of these people were, and then we have a conversation, I would bet my bottom dollar that these people would go home saying, well, for the first time in my life, I walked hand in hand in solidarity with a Black individual, and I realized that we share a lot of the same values, a lot of the same principles, a lot of the same morals. And so in doing that and walking in solidarity and walking in their shoes, looking out, seeing how Democrats or people pushing for Biden, I was able to see that the same things in which Democrats see from conservatives in the outbursts and, the way that they treat them because people have different perspectives and ideologies, I was able to see and convey to the Democrats that are screaming Black Lives Matter in my community that as a Black individual, I seen that they reacted the same way that they denounce and they criticize the Republicans in reacting. Meaning that as a Black person, not being on either side, but being in the middle of the road, I could see that it was just two sides that had different opinions that was showing a lack of understanding or respect for a different opinion. And so I said, to be a true human being and respect one another is not going into a situation with your own perspective and your own ideologies and expecting for someone else to lay their beliefs down to pick up yours. That's not solidarity. And I realize that a lot of people go into that when they talk about having a conversation and talk about they want to help and hear someone out. They going into it with the intentions that someone is supposed to lay their beliefs down and embrace theirs. And if they don't, they ridicule them. And now they are the enemy. And so that's what I want to say to that.
Jordan, go ahead and drop the mic, man. Honestly, seriously, that was amazing.
Yes.
It was amazing.
It was.
And it ties together all of the things that keep popping up for me, right? It ties together this acceptance, the idea of acceptance and being curious, and that leading to openness, right? And also, so I'm a social worker, I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a social worker. And one of the, like tenets of social work practice is that, the things that you denounce and despise in others are the same things that you denounce and despise in yourself, right? And so if we can look at the things that come up for us around these issues that bring us to a place of fear, right? Then that also means that we can also see the other side and see how they come to it from a place of fear. And if we can see that, then we can choose to put our fear down. And that's where we get solidarity and change, right? And so I love that. I love that you did that, and that that story was just fabulous, and the things that you learned from it. And I think, oh my gosh, I forget what time we have until I'm a mess. But are we over time, Georgia? No.
No, but we really need to keep the comments a little bit short so we can hear more from the.
I will, Matthew, if it's okay, I want to sort of maybe put this out there, and perhaps it's the last question. I don't know. I will let you weigh in on it. But one of the things that, I sort of wanted to wrap it up with is, what are the things that we can carry forward, and not just, from this discussion, but in terms of what we are learning through doing this work, right? That can become the things that we have in our little card, like, hey, activists, do this, right? What are the things that we can start teaching? And just all across, from what we're learning, what we're discussing. If there are any, points that sort of stick out to you.
And I think I would add to that, what do you need in order to do that?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
What resources,
or not even
what resources do you need? Because you have a lot of folks here in the virtual room that can aid you, or other resources that you might need, they can bring to bear. So in terms of answering that question, think about what resources you need in order to make that happen. And how we can help you do that.
And I think just another way to look at that is, what do you need us to hear, as like the old heads, the people that are like have been a lot older, but like, what do you need us to hear in order to support you best?
I would say, so I'll start. So I would say, like, going ahead moving ahead in the future, I would say like what we all need to keep in mind is to be open-minded, because you can't change anything if you're stuck in your ways. You need to be open-minded and be able to empathize for someone and try to understand as best as you can about what they were experiencing or what they are experiencing, and trying to figure out ways that you can help. But also by doing that, you also need to do that for everyone, because you can't be selective to one group of people's problems, because that's not activism. Activism is fighting for everyone and trying to be as equitable as possible. So we as activists need to always ensure that we're fighting for everyone and not just who we want to pick. And I would say, so open-mindedness, and then I would just say, as I said earlier, just like sympathy and empathy and everything. And then I would say for the older generation to hear, just to like help with everything, I would just say to trust the youth, because even though we are young and we haven't been we haven't been around as long and we haven't experienced as much, we still know what we want. And even though it may seem a little radical right now, if we look like 50 years in the future, what we thought was radical or whatever, like that's going to be the norm, and that's going to be the basic thing that everybody has. So I would just say, just really listening to the youth and being respectful of the ideas, and trying not to dismiss the youth for their concerns or problems and saying, oh no, like it's too big of an issue for you to try and help it fix. Well, the issue is that no one in the past was trying to fix this. So now it's like, okay, well now it's on our hands to try and fix this and improve not only other people's lives, but the lives of our future children, our grandkids, our great grandkids. So I think that that is what people need to hear and understand.
Listen, you just said that beautifully, and I'm all about getting out of your way because I think that you guys, I think you are absolutely correct, and that it's short-sighted to think that we know more than you, because you're right. You guys are the ones that are building the future, and you know what matters. And so I want to just echo and underscore that, and that I say it to my cohorts, compatriots, whatever, all the time. Let the youth do it. Honestly, it's yours, and I just want to be here to support you.
No, that's excellent. It really is.
This is Anita Lewis. Can I make a comment? Just a comment. I think this was great, and I just want to say, because I know Nick. I'm from EOP, by the way. How are you? It's nice to see everybody. I've been listening. This is great. So I just want to say to Nick and all you young people, because I've heard about the artists. I've heard about, I have the information. Yep, I'm an old head, but I am a doer. So all you guys got to do is call me. Call me, because when I have the information, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you what to do and how to get there, because we're here, we're old heads, but I'm here to open the door for you so you can walk through it. And I'm going to tell you how to get there. So I just wanted to make that comment because I thought this was great. You young people are on fire, and I got some stuff for you. Kuba, call me.
I will echo that. Anita is she is a woman to know. She is a force to reckon with, but she can hook you up and connect you to nobody's business. So
I will
use her.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I know we're pushing up against time.
I do things. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. I know we're pushing up against time, so why don't we hear from some of the other young people on the panel?
Sorry, I was so caught up in it. What was the question again?
Really, the question is, what do you need in order to make some change? You know, the resources that were just brought to bear from Anita and other folks. What do you need in order to make some of the changes that you see needed to happen?
Hello. I don't know who's talking. I'm sorry. My name is Carnell Parks. I'm considered one of them old heads, I guess. I think, you know, when we talk about these things that are happening, let's even go to the police. Some of us old heads remember Officer Friendly.
Yes.
We remember what that looked like, the connection with, you know, people in police. And I just don't think that we're so far off from that, because that was a training that was implemented and they had to do it.
Yes.
So, you know, when we talk about, I don't know if any of you young guys remember the Officer Friendly thing, but these things need to be brought back into the community, because now we're watching these things on TV, and the very people who are supposed to be the civil servants of our community are kids are afraid of them, especially our Black kids.
That's so true.
So you grow up with this thought pattern that these aren't the good people, but these are the servants of our neighborhoods. And you know, I'm not going to go any further, but I think that we have a pattern that we can go back to and rejuvenate what was done before and bring it back and make it better.
Thank you for that. And I know, Cuba, you were about to say something right before. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks, Carnell. So in my community, like you see here with Anita and Carnell, they put in footwork for a long time. A lot of the older folks, you know what I mean? They've been out here doing stuff like that for a long time. I know plenty. And in my opinion, if anybody needs to be in it, it's the young people. I feel like the older folks that have put in the work, spaces and things like that, but I feel like it's our job to make it, to amplify it, to make it known, to put the aggression there, to apply the pressure, to say, you know, who's your trainer, what are you training them, are you doing community policing? Like that's what it sounded like when you said the Mr. Friendly, Officer Friendly. It sounded like community policing. Like, are the people that are policing these communities, are they from these communities? How often do they actually speak to these people? What is actually going on inside your police department? And the culture, the teachings, the trainings, and things like that. What are you doing to actually connect with your community and things like that? And like I said, the people, the older people of my community, they've been applying pressure and doing things for a long time, and a lot of people don't hear them, especially the EOP. So I feel like, you know, better advertisement, better marketing, or whatever it may be, will definitely amplify it. And I feel like the younger people can do that. And I've already spoke to Carnell and, you know, Anita and them about getting a bunch of younger Black kids together for art projects and things like that. And I've been gathering young people, and I'm trying to get them to the forefront so I can show, like, hey, this is what we can do as a youth, and we can apply pressure through art. And maybe that'll get people up to actually realize, like, hey, you can apply pressure on your police departments, on your councilman, on your mayor, and anybody else that needs to know to change policies, to get things going. Because a lot of ways of movement start and a lot of things that are known and sparked are through an expression of art in many forms. So like I said, in my opinion, the older folk around my area, they've been doing the footwork for a long time, and it's been long enough. So
I love that.
Thank you for that, Cuba.
Yeah.
Do we hear from Haley?
Yeah, so I think as far as the younger generation, I think we need to keep doing what we're doing. Stay involved. I think we need to ourselves get involved in politics. I think our message is on point, and we have the power to change our country with our vote and with our ability to take leadership roles ourselves. And as far as the older generation, I think especially for older white people, one of the most powerful things that I've heard is Chelsea Handler. She did a Netflix special called Hello Privilege, It's Me, Chelsea, and she talks about white privilege. And there's a portion where she sits down with Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish, and she asks them, what would you tell people, white people, who are oblivious to white privilege? And Tiffany Haddish, what she said is one of the most powerful things I heard. She said, you guys know your history, you know where you came from, you know where you're going because you know where you came from. She said, we don't have that. We have to create a generational identity. White people need to understand that, right? So we have a history in our country of never acknowledging the true power and the influence of Black individuals. So as white people, we need to come together and we need to say that Black Americans deserve their moment, right? It's long overdue. We need to vote for leadership that believes that too. And our generation needs to keep pushing for that, because this fighting of racism and police brutality, we've been doing this for way too long. Change needs to happen now.
All right, Holly, you can go ahead and drop the mic now. It's your turn to drop the mic. That was beautiful. And it brought me to tears. It did. And we all know that that's, you know, that's what I do. I cry. That was beautiful, honestly.
Yeah, I'll go next. Holly, thank you for that. I'll add that, you know, with what Holly said is people need to embrace the things that they are not comfortable with. A lot of times what I see from a lot of my, you know, Caucasian friends, and even, you know, some of my Black and brown people, is we don't like to be uncomfortable. And there's no way you can have everlasting change or upward mobility without being uncomfortable. And uncomfortable is a lot of times not acknowledging the realities of the world that we really live in, and truly what we're up against. And so with that being said, we need to be real about where we are today and how we got here in order to really and truly change today for a better future tomorrow. And that can't be half-assed. Excuse my language, but we can't have, you know, part of the truth and you know, the other, you know, lies, right? People have to be honest and truthful about what is going on here from all sides and acknowledge the part that they play in it, right? That way we could bridge the gaps. As far as the elders to youth, you know, what does that look like? I know when in my generation at 33, it was said from my elders that I was the last of the Mohicans, meaning, you know, people are always going to want something, right? Want to see something, but people aren't going to understand how to get there, right? And so part of being young is not only knowing what you want, but you also have to have an understanding of, you know, the people who came before you and the things that were done, to understand how we got here today, to understand how do we get to the things that you want to see for tomorrow. And so connection between our elders, you know, the middle age, and also the youth. We need to bridge all gaps here. And everyone needs to really come together to make these things happen. It's not going to be on one generation. That is the problem, is that, you know, I believe that for people to say that it's on one generation is kind of like pretty much throwing your hands up and putting a burden on a particular generation. I think collaboratively, we all need to learn how to coexist, share ideas, and the elders need to be more open-minded in relinquishing some of their power, right? Because you guys have been on the earth a lot longer, so you guys are in probably you know, more powerful positions and sitting at more powerful seats and have a more powerful network. And so how are you guys going to relinquish some of that to the youth who are ready to ascend, right? And fast track their growth and development and leadership ability to be the example for the younger ones coming behind us, right? To ensure that whatever progress is made is sustainable. Because whatever it is that we create, it needs to be sustainable. And how do you do that? By understanding that the world is much bigger than you, the individual. And how we become stronger is to empower someone else and the younger generations coming behind us, not to try to do whatever is in your grasp to maintain your power and control, right? So understanding that your job as growing up in the world is to, yes, transcend and be great yourselves, but also pay it forward to the younger generation coming behind you, because that is what we're always working towards, is for better tomorrows. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, there's two things that you bring up many things, but two things that stick out in my mind that you mentioned. One is what we would call it in business terms, institutional memory. You know, if you lose institutional memory, you can't replace that. And you end up doing the same thing over and over again. The other thing is succession planning. So just like each one teach one is what they used to say back in the day, we need to have that happen now as well, because there's definitely the youth have the energy, the youth have the imagination, and they also have the vision. You know, the older folks have seen what has worked, what has worked and what hasn't worked, I should say, and they can provide, like I said, that institutional memory. But it's really up to the young people to carry it forward and to move forward with it. Just like we're asking about resources that are needed, you can always reach back and get that information, but ultimately it's you who's going to see, as for the biblical folks on the call, you're going to see the promised land. You know, you have a lot of people who are the Moseses of the world, who are shepherding you, guiding you, but ultimately it's you who is going to reach that promised land.
Yeah, and just before I cap it, I just want to give a shout out to Jerome Emmanuel out of Elmira, who's seen the greatness in me and is fast tracking and elevating me as a leader, and seeing that I was him, but at a much younger age. And so he sees the potential. And so he's taking the liberty as the elder statesperson in my life and saying, well, my duty is to fast track where I know you're going, but cut that time in half. And so that's what we need to do. So I just want to give a shout out to Jerome Emmanuel, and thank you for having me. And this was beautiful. I look forward to joining these forums in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just cut in for a minute. Our time is up, but if you want to have like 5 more minutes, I'm not going anywhere. I'm on pause. So let me know. I don't want to cut any youth off who didn't have time to express their opinion or whatever. So if you want like 5 more minutes, it's fine with me. So.
If anyone has anything burning to say, please do so. Otherwise, I think we can wrap it up. No? Last chance.
Okay, well, maybe we can do a wrap then. I'd like to thank everybody so much for a job well done, to Mr. Latimer and Ms. Titus, and to this phenomenal panel. You guys have to come back again, because I don't think we heard enough from you. You gave us some buzzwords, as one said. We have to think about people who are operating on different frequencies. Sometimes we don't think about that. We want everybody on our frequency. Somebody talked about being less judgmental. Somebody talked about power and the role of power. Somebody talked about unity, open-minded, less judgmental. All of those buzzwords are key if we are to make it to the promised land. You talked about effective communication, and I just want to do a little shout out. The mayor, the senator, and congressman did a law enforcement roundtable last week, and they had law enforcement people, 12 of them there. And we had effective communication. We heard each other, we listened to each other. What we do with it It's up to us individually. But I think we heard each other. We talked about difficult conversations, uncomfortable conversations. But if we're all on this ship together, we need to learn how to sail in peace. So I'd like to thank all of you for what you've done and what you've said tonight. And in terms of the terminology, the old heads have laid the foundation. Now we want the young heads to make good trouble and take us from protest to policy. And that means you're going to have to get off the street too and work, and you have to vote. You have to do your census. You have to take your souls to the polls, because too many of us have been on the menus of life where we get ordered around, used and abused. And you hear me say this all the time. It's time for you to get off the menu, get to the policy table, and help plan the menu. So we're counting on you. That's why we're having this forum, because we are old heads and we've been there a long time, and it's time for us to just be supporters for you. So if you're ready to run, we're ready to push you. So thank you so much for a job well done. And the last thing I'm going to say to some people who had heard that we might be doing a voter caravan next week, we're not going to do that based on what is happening with COVID and all the things that are going on. I talked to quite a few people, and nobody really want to come off a pause to do that. If we're driving around in a voter caravan, probably nobody will see us. So I don't know if it would be effective to do that, but we were thinking about doing that. But I'm going to say, whether you see us driving around or hear about us, vote like your life depends on it, because it does. And I think we are getting a lot of information on voting from everywhere. Everything, time you turn on the TV, your machines, whatever. Their education, there's all kinds of things. There's no excuse. So don't sit home and say, I didn't like either one of those candidates, because you're going to get one of them. And you better be deciding what is better between the devil and the deep blue sea, because you're going to get one. So take your souls to the polls. Thank you so much. Be well, and may God bless you. Stay safe. And I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Oliver so he can close us out, so you can go and watch the debate. Reverend
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Georgia, and to all the panelists and our moderators. We certainly appreciate you. Let's just pray together. Father, we thank you now for what our eyes have seen and what our ears have heard. We pray that what our ears have heard will soak into our very soul, and it will bring forth new life. We thank you for the opportunity to not only hear the young people, but to lock arms with them and to move this mountain with your help. We ask that you would bless us as we move from this place. Thank you for the NAACP and its officers and those who took charge of putting this program together, that we might better our own beloved community and our own selves. Help us to be stronger together. In Jesus' name we pray. It is in his name we ask. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thanks again, everybody. Be well,
Amen.
be safe, and vote.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be reaching out to the panelists, so you'll hear from me again. But thank you all. It was a really great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
nice
you,
night.
guys.
Love y'all. Bye-bye.
Night.
All right. Love you.
Right now.